The C9 light machine gun.
Fire.
Gas operated, air cooled, disintegrating link belt or magazine feed, open bolt and direct feed mechanism, rotating bolt locking action, fully automatic. The nominal cyclic rate of fire of the C9 light machine gun is 750 rounds per minute. The C9 maintains continuous fire as long as the trigger is held to the rear. Belt feed. The round on the feed tray slot is struck by the feed horn of the bolt. The belt advances the next round as the bolt carrier moves to the rear. Magazine feed. The left locking lug of the bolt strikes the top lead round in the magazine as the bolt carrier moves forward. On the next cycle, the bolt strikes the bottom lead round. From firing to locking, the cycle of operation takes 7/100ths of a second. Firing, unlocking, extraction, ejection, cocking, loading, locking. Cocking before firing. The cocking handle is pulled all the way to the rear. The weapon is cocked. The cocking handle is pushed forward and the weapon put on safe. The feed cover is raised and the belt positioned on the feed tray. The weapon must be cocked and placed on safe before insertion of the magazine. The weapon is placed on fire. The trigger is centrally pivoted at the top. Squeezing of the trigger forces the trigger roller to rise. Upward pressure of the trigger roller forces the sear to rotate on its axis pin. The sear spring returns the trigger to the on-squeezed position. The tripping lever is pulled downward as the trigger is squeezed and is pushed rearward by the toe of the sear, compressing the tripping lever spring. The spring forces the tripping lever forward, and the toe of the sear is held by the tripping lever notch. The trigger action again. As long as pressure is maintained on the trigger, the tripping lever and the heel of the sear remain below the piston extension way, allowing unimpeded passage of the piston extension and continuous fire. Release of the trigger pushes the tripping lever upward into the piston extension way and raises the toe of the sear. The recoiling piston extension forces the tripping lever back, releasing the toe of the sear. The heel of the sear engages the forward bent of the piston extension and stops the action. The trigger action again. The weapon must be cocked in order to be put on safe. When the weapon is taken off safe, a cutaway section on the safety catch allows the heel of the sear to drop out of the piston extension way when the trigger is squeezed. Cross-section view of the safety catch as the weapon is taken off safe. As the trigger is squeezed, the heel of the sear drops out of the piston extension way. The belt ammunition feed cycle. During the forward movement of the piston extension, the round on the feed tray slot is struck by the bolt feed horn, dislodged from the belt link and chambered. Top view of the action. As the piston extension and feed roller move forward, the round on the feed tray slot is dislodged from the belt. Rear view of the action. The round on the feed tray slot is held in position by the cartridge retaining pawls. The feed horn of the bolt dislodges the round from the belt link. The round is guided toward the chamber by the slanted walls of the barrel extension. As the feed roller enters the curved section of the feed lever channel, it activates the feed link, which controls the feed pawls. Rear view of the action. The feed pawls advance the second round to the edge of the feed tray slot. The first round, not seen, has now been delivered to the chamber, and the forward motion of the action is complete. Rearward motion of the piston slide after firing and unlocking reactivates the feed link. Rear view of the action. The feed pawls advance round number 2 to the feed tray slot. The bolt withdraws the cartridge case of round number 1 from the chamber as the piston extension continues to the rear. The belt feed cycle is complete. The magazine feed cycle. During the forward movement of the action, the bolt locking lug strikes the base of the lead round of the magazine and drives it toward the chamber. The magazine spring forces the next round into position as the action returns to the rear. Side view of the action as the bolt strikes the lead round in the magazine. The next lead round is moved into position as the action returns to the rear. The C9 cycle of operation. Cocking all the way back and all the way forward. Weapon on safe. Belt feed or magazine feed. Weapon is taken off safe. When the trigger is squeezed, The heel of the sear drops out of the forward bent of the piston extension. While pressure is maintained on the trigger, the heel of the sear and the tripping lever remain below the piston extension way, allowing the piston extension to move back and forth and maintain continuous fire. When the cartridge is chambered, the continuing forward motion of the bolt forces the extractor to clip into the extractor groove. Next, the forward motion of the piston extension and bolt carrier forces rotation and locking of the bolt. The locking action again. This time, watch the action of the bolt carrier on the bolt cam lug, which locks the bolt. To prevent premature firing and blowback, the firing pin cannot reach the cartridge primer until the bolt is locked into the barrel extension. This final forward motion of the piston extension brings the firing pin into contact with the cartridge primer. The explosion of the priming mixture causes combustion of the propellant, which produces heat and gas. The rapid expansion of the propellant gases separates the bullet from the cartridge case and launches it down the barrel. Some of the propellant gases are directed rearward to recock the weapon. The gas regulator has two settings. On the normal setting, the regulator provides enough pressure to drive the action to the rear while releasing the excess through the gas escape vent. The second setting of the regulator, for adverse conditions, closes the escape vent to provide more gas pressure for recocking. On locking, as the action is driven to the rear, the action of the bolt carrier cam slot on the bolt cam lug forces the bolt to rotate and unlock. The extractor, clipped into the cartridge groove on locking, withdraws the cartridge case from the chamber. The ejector lever dislodges the cartridge case from the bolt face. The return spring is compressed by the gas pressure acting on the piston assembly. The cycle of operation, firing, unlocking, extraction, ejection, cocking, loading, and locking continues as long as the trigger is held to the rear. Under normal conditions, when the trigger is released, the gas pressure drives the action all the way to the rear so that the sear engages the forward bent of the piston extension. If there is not enough gas pressure to drive the action all the way back, the sear engages the second or rearward bent and prevents unintended firing or a runaway gun. Adjustment of the gas regulator setting to adverse conditions restores the gas pressure to normal.